Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And now, as ever, to the papers, and that Observer story you were hearing about in the news. Khan accuses the Prime Minister of using Trump playbook tactics, but he's also quite critical of the direction of the Labour Party in that same interview. Sunday Times there. We'll be talking about this very shortly. Spy chiefs say the quitting EU is a security risk. The Mail on Sunday has so many exclusives they can't decide which one to put on the front page. They've got lots of them there, but also UK Navy officer joins IS in his aviator glasses there. Finally, the Sunday Telegraph, migration pressure on schools revealed. That's a big pressure on British schools caused by mass migration, they say. So, to the papers, and we're going to start, I think, with Anushka. And great big spread there on the elections in London, but you want to talk about the elections more generally, of course, across the entire country.
Yeah, this article in the Sunday Times is one of a lot in the papers about the election. As you say, a lot of focus on Labour's cup win, if you like, in London. But also, oh yeah, okay. But if you want to think of a football analogy, how did Labour do in the league elsewhere in the country? And there's two narratives that we're seeing in the papers. One, worst results since 1985 in local election results for Labour. On the other hand, Jeremy Corbyn actually held on to a lot of councils in the south that they were expecting to lose. This article says council leaders were lining up to criticise him after they lost control, but they didn't do it. And I think, to be fair to Jeremy Corbyn, you can't on the one hand say he had nothing to do with London, even though actually his face was on a lot of Conservative literature. But let's blame him for everything that took place in Scotland. It's a lose-lose for him in a lot of the papers today.
He's looking a bit stronger as a result, though, the last few days, is he not?
Well, what this has clearly done is it has killed dead any talk of an immediate coup. There wasn't enough there to say Jeremy Corbyn has to go now, but he has a lot of critics among MPs in his own party. They will continue to argue that he's not doing well enough.
So we've talked about Labour in the south-east of England. The one place they did catastrophically badly, of course, was Scotland, Fraser.
Yes, the worst result since 1918 in Scotland. And today's Sunday Herald has Nicola Sturgeon adapting to the fact that there is now a new political heroine in Scotland, somebody who's triumphant. If anything, more interesting than Nicola Sturgeon. Here is Ruth Davidson, the Scottish Tory leader. The Sunday Times has got her not just taking the bull by the horns, but riding on one too. And it's an incredible...
The yak, I think.
It's an incredible achievement. She's doubled the Tory results in Scotland. And the words Scottish Tory are no longer a contradiction in terms, as they were, you know, when I was at the Scottish Parliament 15 years ago, people pitied you for being a Tory rather than hated you, and now they're the official opposition. So it's an incredible narrative of success, not one that Nicola Sturgeon likes too much. The big question is whether she's got the power now to call another referendum.
Because she's not got an overall majority, but presumably she can do a deal with, for instance, the Scottish Greens and get enough votes if she wants to do that.
Technically, yes, but the SNP's own manifesto didn't make that clear. So there is a sense that we've now reached peak SNP and it's all downhill from here.
Well, we'll see. I see even her opponents now call Ruth Davidson Tank Girl, which is a great new phrase.
She writes tanks as well as yaks.
Tank Girl. OK. Let's move on then to the front page of the Observer we were promising. Kate, take us through that.
Yes, well, the new Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has written a comment piece for the Observer this Sunday. Now, leave it to the Observer to prove that Trump, even if he's not the story, can still be the headline, because actually Sadiq's piece really focuses on his own party, the changes that need to be made there. He focuses on the anti-Semitism that is, you know, within the party to some extent, and he says, look, we can criticize Zach Goldsmith and the Conservatives, and we should, for the bad tactics that they used in this campaign, especially against me and my heritage, but we also have to take ownership ourselves. It's a really positive piece. I'm very hopeful for Sadiq. He and I definitely disagree when it comes to housing policy and transport. I'm nervous about some of the things that he particularly wants to crack down on, like Uber, but if his attitude is really, let's be a broader party and let's talk across the aisle, let's talk to free marketeers, let's talk to Conservatives, then I'm actually very hopeful.
Big Ten. Do you think that, Anushka, that Sadiq is going to be a big player in the Labour Party in the next year or two?
He's going to be a huge player. There are a lot of MPs who are not fans of Jeremy Corbyn who've said to me in recent days, actually, we want Sadiq to win so he can be an alternative leadership figure for us. I think it is quite interesting that he's had a pop at Zac Goldsmith's campaign, because I do think that has backfired for the Conservatives and for the Prime Minister himself, because they didn't win.
Even Zac's sister, Jemima Goldsmith, was tweeting against it, wasn't she?
You could not make this stuff up. She said it wasn't the Zac that she knew. And I do think they had a choice, even if their tactics were innocent in the first place. When they saw all the noise around it about dog whistle politics, they could have backed down.
Fraser?
The Sunday Times has got a piece now about security is coming back into the Brexit debate. They had abandoned it after the Brussels thing, but now we're trying to come back with a joint article by Jonathan Evans, former MI5, and Sir John Soares. Now, it's a rather ambitious article because most people involved in security tell you privately that there is no case, really. The EU doesn't really help. It's all about bilateral relationships. Now, in their letter, for example, they mention that as an EU member, the great thing is access to data. It's true that the EU's got a database of 90,000 fingerprints, but no means of accessing that data, I mean, searching it. So what's the point?
Because there isn't an EU intelligence service, as it were.
Well, there are sort of various agencies, but, you know, the Brits, we deal with the French, but we regard the Spanish as being hopeless, the Italians as being hopeless. I mean, this is not sort of thing that anyone admits in public, but the thing is that it doesn't work like that. You've got NATO, but when it comes to intelligence, it's the Five Eyes that we trust. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what John Soares says afterwards to defend what most police, certainly involved in security, would regard as the indefensible.
Indefensible, very good. OK, right, we move to the iPad because we're incredibly cool in 21st century. And you've got
Yes.
The four things I've learned about Donald Trump in the primary.
Nate Silver's 538 website has become a real staple for any political geeks over in the States, and I think over here as well.
And just remind us, Nate Silver was the guy who had a very, very good record of predicting what was going to happen in the election.
Very successful in 2008.
Less good when it comes to Trump.
Yes. Well, what's so interesting about this article is it's not actually written by Nate Silver, but what his team is flagging up is that there was evidence in the polls 6 months ago that Donald Trump could win this primary. It's just that people weren't looking at it. They weren't necessarily looking at bad evidence. They were looking at his unfavorability ratings, which are still sky high, worse than Hillary Clinton's, which are also very bad. But, you know, he was saying that there was evidence in the polls that this man was going to be popular, but people in many ways just wanted to, you know, shield themselves from it. I'm very sympathetic to that. You know, we are now looking at a race that's possibly going to sport two New York elitists who are both truly establishment figures.
And used to be very close friends and now pretend to hate each other.
There's a great photo at Trump's wedding of them all with their arms around each other. I think that's going to be shared worldwide leading up to this election. It's frustrating to me. I think similar to the mayor election, actually, people deserved a better debate. They deserve to talk about the policies, but we have to listen to Donald Trump's rhetoric. And frankly, Clinton, who certainly isn't as offensive, but I think a lot of her rhetoric is empty. She's a big flip-flopper. You know, it's painful. A lot of Americans say they're going to stay home.
So will Republicans like you be hoping for a third-party candidate then?
Possibly. It's hard to say. I mean, the Republican Party might be changed forever going forward. I think.
You mean destroyed?
Well, blown up. Who knows how it will rebuild? I mean, I certainly can't put my weight behind Donald Trump. I don't want to vote for Hillary Clinton. So it's a tough position.
Like many Americans, yes.
Yeah.
Anushka, let's return to a domestic story. Lots of stuff in the papers today about a fight between the BBC and the government over the charter renewal, all sorts of proposals. And Armando Iannucci has weighed in.
Yeah. Am I allowed to talk about the BBC?
You're allowed to talk about the BBC.
So Armando, who's brilliant, the creator of The Thick of It, has written this impassioned piece about how much everyone loves the BBC and questioned if some people in government don't really like that fact and thinks it's wrong that the BBC Charter should be looked at every 5 years. I mean, it's a really good piece. People should read it. I would say that the BBC is a very big player in an industry that is struggling. It is paid for by the licence fee. I do think that, you know, difficult conversations about what the BBC should do shouldn't always react or be responded to by this kind of outpouring of rage by everybody.
Right. And of course, you say it's a difficult, and we've just lost The Independent as a newspaper.
Very,
and the New Day, which we had, the New Day's editor on the sofa just a few weeks ago, it seems, and it's gone already. Lifetime of a Mayfly.
And what a lot of people don't realise is the BBC is now the #1 player in the written word as well. Its website is 4 times as big as the biggest newspaper. Difficult to compete if your opponent's giving it stuff away for free.
Not to say we don't love it.
Thank you for that. Fraser, I come to you very often for cultural news.
Yes.
You want to talk about the Eurovision Song Contest.
I am delighted that the papers are now seeing Eurovision week starts next week with the semis on Tuesday. And we're now seeing it for the political event, which it is. I mean, sure, there is music there, but it's a collision between music, culture and politics.
Yeah.
If you want to find out what's happening in Europe, then tune in next Saturday. You'll find everything you need to know. Hatchets are buried, kisses are blown, and it deserves a kind of serious analysis, which is now getting in the Sunday press. Now, Russia is now the favourite to win, which is quite interesting.
So that's an alarming kind of geopolitical moment, is it?
It's certainly, you can see the trends. France is number 2 because they're singing in English this time. The French used to hate singing in English because they regarded themselves as being the cultural purists. But anyway, if you want to see what's happening in the world, Andrew, then just tune in.
But what happens after Brexit? That's what I want to know.
I used to go to a party where we all had to choose a country and dress up, and I got Lithuania. It was very, very difficult indeed. Kate, let's move on to another story which tells us about the way we are going as a society. Driverless cars in the Sunday Times.
This is so positive. You know, we don't even need to switch technological paradigms to achieve this. We have the technology at our fingertips now to potentially in the next 5 years implement driverless cars. And this is something that's going to make us safer. And as this article points out, it's really going to help the elderly who might be struggling to get around. And I love stories like this. It speaks to the best of humans and innovation. And it speaks to the best of progress, how we always have to be looking forward. We don't want to regulate these things. We don't want to hold them back. We want to push ourselves to living better lives.
And it's going to change our urban landscapes. No more kind of rows and rows and rows of parked cars, because eventually there won't be much point in owning a car. You can summon up a driverless car and it'll cost much less.
Absolutely, and hopefully leading to reducing risk in driving.
So Anushka has come in wearing Leicester City blue. Our final story, Anushka. A really great sort of rags to riches,
isn't it?
Magical story.
Oh, you must read the Paul Hayward piece in the Sunday Telegraph. It is brilliant. It's a Leicester fiesta. I mean, in Parliament after Leicester won, it was amazing. Keith Vaz wandering around with his Leicester scarf. I was with Jonathan Ashworth, another local MP, who was getting congratulated. David Cameron and Jeremy Corbyn agreed. I think the whole country is rather pleased.
Everyone loves Leicester. Well done, Leicester. And by the way, well done, Sunday Times. It's 10,000th edition today, so a cry at them. But thank you all very much indeed for the paper review.